Greetings, adventurers. I came here to give you a story of some of my adventures. This story starts in the north. The title of this story is The Giant War of the North. Chapter 1. Our adventure begins, as all intriguing ones do, with a pint in our young hero's hands and hearts filled with the yearning for glory and riches. Alright, we're all here now. What's this news you have, Otto? Blamed the Juggernaut, just sipping at his ale. Otto, in his black attire, just smirked back at the large man and fingered at his goatee. The other man at the table, whom they have known for some time, looked gleefully between the two other men, awaiting the answer. Okay, Otto sighed. I've made you wait long enough. While I was collecting some materials in town, I heard some older adventurers talking. There's a dwarf in a town south of Waterdeep that hires inexperienced adventurers to help them get started. We just have to go to Nimstone? No, that's not right. Nightstone, yes, that was the name of it. The Juggernaut looked at Otto with a slight raise of his eyebrows while taking another sip of his drink. Vaughn, seeing that Otto was done, "So, to Nightstone then?" he asked while turning to look at the Juggernaut. He put down his mug and with a slight sigh, agreed. "Yes, we will meet the dwarf. Did you catch his name, Otto?" "I did. His name was Lorak," Otto exclaimed rather proudly. The group celebrated their lead that would hopefully begin their grand adventure. Once morning had arrived, they met up outside the tavern they stayed in, all packed and ready to go. The young lads had their heads held high as they made their way down the high road to the road that leads to Nightstone. The roads were well worn, with Waterdeep being such a large commercial hub on the coast. They passed many caravans on their way to the city. The crossroads came up after about 10 miles and the party turned on to the tradeway that takes them directly to their destination. As the party grew closer, with the trees making way for the clearing and the moat that led up to the town, they could get a clearer look at where they were headed. "Ah, I think that's Nightstone," shouted Vaughn, pointing at the walled town and keep. A repeated noise grew louder and louder as they approached. "Is that a bell?" asked Vaughn, turning his ear toward the town. Otto, squinting at the town, said, "That could be an alarm of some kind. They might be in trouble." In silence, scanning the area as they approached, the group made their way to the bridge that lets them over the moat. The town was partially visible from the bridge. Large boulders that were sunk into the ground were littered across the town. Houses had roofs completely destroyed. There were partially collapsed sections of the wall, towers, and buildings inside. The ringing of the bell continued, blotting out most other sounds. The Juggernaut got off his horse, and the two others followed suit, leading their horses across the bridge. No villagers were present to greet them. The two guard towers stood empty. Past a few buildings, closer to the center of the town square, two large dogs could be seen. They crept forward to get a better look. The vicious sounds of a carcass being cleaned filled their ears. Closer and closer they crept. Vaughn, I don't think those are dogs, Otto whispered. The Juggernaut pressed himself against the building that leads into the center of town. Peeking around to get a better look, he saw two pairs of large eyes staring at him. Wargs, whispered Vaughn. In a flash, the Juggernaut unsheathed his greatsword from his back and charged in. Otto rushed to grab his tome from his pack. Vaughn prepared his staff as one of the wargs jumped towards him. The Juggernaut steps in front of one and swings with all his might in a wide arc. The freshly sharpened greatsword cleaves through the warg in a single strike. Otto shouts, "Eldritch Blast!" and a green fire goes shooting off over the wall of the city, missing his target. Vaughn struggles with the warg upon him. They fail to strike each other. Vaughn wiped off some gore from his arm, looking at the sword that just felled the warg in front of him. "Thanks," squealed Vaughn, looking around for more wargs. Otto and Vaughn looked around, but all they could detect was the sound of the bell ringing that obscured the sounds of their battle. When they turned to check the Juggernaut, he was removing the fang from one of the wargs. "Juggernaut, that's bad," exclaimed Vaughn, looking at him very judgingly. "I disagree. It was a worthy foe. I honor it by keeping a token of our battle," answered the Juggernaut. Seemingly satisfying Vaughn, they looked around once more with clearer eyes. The bell ringing was coming from a temple with distinct symbols that adorned the outer walls. The symbols were described by Vaughn to the other two, a sun representing Lathander, and the trees with unicorns representing the goddess Maliki. Once the lesson was finished, they took note that the front door was wide open. Taking a similar formation to their first engagement, Juggernaut crept forward, sword in hand. Inside of the temple had light shining down from the stained glass windows set in the north and south walls. The benches appeared to be upturned, and a trail of broken trinkets led further inside. Exploring through the first room of the temple and finding no danger, they turned towards the half-opened door at the back of the room. Looking through, they could see a straw mattress that had been torn open, straw littering the ground. Torn priestly vestments and miscellaneous trinkets spread out around the room. Then they looked up. Sound of giggling preceded their upturned gazes, alongside the wail of the bell, as goblins swing back and forth from the rope of the bell, causing it to ring out. "Get down here and fight me, little runts," taunted the Juggernaut. The goblins were already on their way down with scimitars in hand. They get a few quick slashes against him. Otto tries his Eldritch Blast once more, searing one goblin as it goes down. The other gets a quick beating with Vaughn's staff, the Juggernaut finishing it off. Silence fell. Looking around, they didn't find any more clues or anything of note. "Ado!" shouts someone outside. "Bark?" Party looked at the two goblins they killed, then quietly made their way to the front of the temple once more. The Juggernaut stepped out of the temple and was immediately struck by arrows. He kept charging out and struck one down with a vicious swing of his sword. Otto once again shouts, "Eldritch Blast!" and drops the other before it could notch another arrow. Vaughn, coming out last, sees two more goblins south of them. They jumped over a fence and scattered into the town. They waited a few moments for more arrows to appear, and none appeared. The Juggernaut, wasting no time, searched the goblins, finding a ring belonging to a Semil Southwell, based on the inscription, and a bag that appears to be moving. The shifting bag had an unusual sound coming from it as it thrashed about. Otto summoned his unseen servant to open the bag in his stead. A group of chickens spilled out of the bag, running frantically in all directions. With a light chuckle, the party continues towards the inn north of them and spots another goblin inside. The Juggernaut walks in and is immediately face planted on the ground as an arrow and pair of daggers pierce his armor. "Juggernaut!" shouted Vaughn, running in. Otto followed Vaughn, but the goblins had already scampered off. They quickly wrapped his wounds and looked around. They tried to find a spot to drag him. "Vaughn, there's a woman up there," whispered Otto, pointing towards a woman dangling precariously over a hole in the floor above them. They dragged their friend up the stairs and carefully checked all corners for potential ambushes. Entering the room where the woman was at, Otto walks over and drags her back from the ledge. She begins to stir. Thus concludes Chapter 1 of the Giant War of the North.